everyone. I'm John Evans. Welcome to another episode of One on One. Now, if you're a fan of the Netflix show Ozark, then chances are you've seen Carson Holmes. He's played the role of Three Langmore for all 4 seasons of the show. Carson landed the role when he was just 13 years old, young enough that his parents wouldn't let him read all of the scripts that he received for the production. But Carson is 19 now, and he's used the experience of being on Ozark to help him land other roles. And he's also looking back at how his career began, sweeping stages and doing whatever he could just to get the chance to perform. Carson Holmes, who stars as the recurring character of Three Langmore on Ozark. Welcome to the One on One with John Evans podcast.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
What's it like to be on a show that is the #1 streaming production on Netflix?
You know, it's pretty dang cool. I feel insanely lucky. I mean, I started off doing community theater productions at Thalian Hall until I was probably about 14 or 15, but actually got the role when I was 13, but I cannot believe it. I got the role when I was 13 years old and could not imagine that it would get to the level of success it has.
And take me back to that. Take me back to the audition and getting this role. And when you finally got on set, did you or anyone you were around have any kind of inkling that it would gain the popularity that it has?
Well, first off, I mean, we do have, stars like Jason Bateman and Laura Linney. So those 2 names in itself really help boost any kind of morale for that type of thing on set. But everybody else there was more or less, first time for something this big. For instance, Julia Garner, who plays Ruth on the show. This, in my opinion, was her blowout. This was truly where she got the snowball going and found her fame. I think she's got 2 or 3 Emmys now, which is unbelievable. Or she's got 2 Emmys. I think if she gets nominated this season and gets it, this will be her 3rd. So Fingers crossed for her. But I was 13 years old when I first got the audition. I started doing auditions and classes at a place called Actors Arsenal, right down the street from my house, actually. And I remember it was this big monologue full of swear words, full of all sorts of stuff about money laundering and it was quite a lot for a 13-year-old to try and memorize and learn, but it took me a solid week. And sure enough, a week later after I did it, I got a call and they were like, "Do you know how to wakeboard?" That was the very first thing they asked me.
Really?
Yeah. Season 1, you see maybe 5 seconds of B-roll, but that's me wakeboarding on the lake. They asked me if I knew how to wakeboard. They didn't even say I got the part. They were like, out of curiosity, do you know how to wakeboard? And I was like, no. So they were like, all right, well, we can figure that out later. Congratulations, you are in Ozark. It was amazing. It was life-changing. Yeah.
And first day, first week on the set, where did you go to shoot? Were you just pretty much awestruck with the complexity of everything?
It was unbelievable. It was this was my second thing I ever auditioned for, and it was the second thing I ever got too. I'd only ever been on one set, worked with one company. I get there, I fly to Atlanta from Wilmington. Everything is just about shot in Atlanta. There's some B-roll that's shot over the lakes of the Ozark and some stuff in Chicago. But I just remember getting to set and they're like, all right, we're gonna put you in this van. You're gonna drive an hour and a half outside of the city. And we go to this old nature park or whatever that's been shut down, and there's all these abandoned bathrooms all over the place, and it's just decrepit and falling apart. And in the middle of all this is 3 trailers right on the lake, and it's unbelievably beautiful, And they've got cranes, and there's 200 plus people on set. It was so unbelievable just to be around all of that. And one of my first scenes, I think it was my second week for season 1, it was all of us in a bathroom, the whole Langmore family and Jason, and we, have stolen his money, and he's coming here to get it back so we can, save face to the cartel. And it was just such an unreal experience, being in that bathroom in this little tiny nature park in the middle of who knows where, Georgia, with Jason Bateman.
Yeah. Is it tough, though, not to tell friends or family what's going to happen? Because there have been a couple of episodes that are pretty good cliffhangers. And so, having the script and having all the inside knowledge, how difficult is that since Ozark has gotten so popular?
Well, I would say it is actually very difficult, especially for this season was the hardest because it's two parts.
Right.
So 7 episodes, and then the next 7 will hopefully be released here pretty soon. But for this first 7, I don't know if you watched or not, but it leaves you off on a very large cliffhanger. And not only did I know that cliffhanger was coming for months, I was there the day they filmed it.
Mm-hmm.
It was unbelievable to see in real life, but I know exactly what happens afterwards. And so I got two lines of people asking about questions this go around. One for, well, what happens in the first 7? And now everybody's texting me again. They're finally getting around to watching it, binging it. And I gotta be like, no, I can't say anything. You're just gonna have to watch. It's fantastic.
That's funny. Now, do you get the entire script? Do you just get your parts of it? How does that all work?
So, at least for my character and other shows I have been on, about a month before, I'll get my part. And then the week of the actual shoot, I'll get the full script. And then I have the full script for, the continuous foreseeable. Or if my scene involves a prior scene, then I'll get the whole script, which it usually does.
Yeah.
But I remember season 1 and season 2, I was 13, 14, 15 years old. My parents were like, there is absolutely no way we're letting you read the whole script, because it is a very dark show with some very dark themes in it. So it wasn't until last season that I actually started reading everything.
Now, does that affect your preparation and how you approach maybe your scene, knowing what has happened? Because I wouldn't imagine you shoot everything chronologically.
No.
And so knowing what has happened before or what's going to happen later, does that impact how you approach your segment?
Yes, especially because Three, he, in this world of darkness, I feel he is more of a happier afterthought, I guess would be my best way to explain him. He's always there with a joke, or he's drinking a beer or whatever, always looking for some kind of comic relief. But he's more oblivious in this crazy, hectic world. And, he deals with a lot of strife with his family, and I don't want to give anything away, and what happens to them. And so, there are these amazing scenes where Ruth and Wyatt, that Wyatt plays my brother, Ruth plays my aunt, but they know exactly what is going on and what is done bad to my family, and I have absolutely no idea. And they're acting, they have to save face in front of me and pretend like everything's all right, and it's just a very interesting dichotomy.
Let me just say, happy belated birthday to you as well.
Thank you very much.
You just turned all of 19 years old.
Yes, I did.
And since you mentioned you're on the show drinking a beer, how does that work? Is it fake beer? Is it they pour the beer out and give you soda? How does that all work?
So they actually have fake beer, but I have celiac disease. I can't eat gluten or wheat, so I can't even drink that. So they actually have given me, you know what an Izzy is? It's just like a fruit flavored drink. They fill them up with Izzy's for me, so keeps me happy, and especially on cold nights. But
does that you say you have celiac? Does that impact you at all during filming or during shooting? Do you have to, prepare any different?
No, not really. It has happened once or twice. It happened once this season where some kind of miscommunication happened with food and something. And so I got my lunch, and it was not gluten-free. And I didn't realize, I hadn't put two and two together, that it wasn't gluten-free. And it's not like my neck closes up or I can't breathe or anything like that,
Right.
but it's, my heart starts beating really quickly. I get very nauseous, and my blood pressure rises, and it's very hard for me to focus. And I had a scene on a ladder, and I almost fell off the ladder a couple times. And then everybody was like, all right, something might be off with Carson. But we figured it out just fine. And there's something called glutenese. So if I ever have an exposure or something like that, ended up delaying set for like an hour or two, which it always sucks. But I would say the only time, something like that.
But at least it sounds to me like they're willing to take the steps necessary to make sure that you're safe now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they're absolutely tremendous. No, that maybe has happened once in all of shooting. Mm-hmm. The people on the set of Ozark are, I mean, my goodness, I've been working with them 5-6 years. I mean, they're my family. I respect and love every single one of them. They're the most amazing people in the world to work with.
What kind of doors does being on something like Ozark open up for a young actor like yourself? Do you have to strike while the iron is hot? Do people know the name Carson Holmes now because of Ozark? Do you still have to audition the same way you did before? Talk to me about that.
Well, it really depends. If you have watched the show, most people think Three was played by 3 different actors, because I started the show at 5'2", and now I'm 6'2". I have grown a literal foot since the start of the show. So Three Langmore, most people know the character name, but they don't actually know who played it. Now, I do have to audition just the same. It is kind of fun if I have an in-person or a Zoom audition with somebody, and they start looking through my resume and they're like, wait a minute, you've been in every season of Ozark? And then, the tide shifts a little bit. It's a lot more enjoyable. But if you ask Alexa who Carson Holmes is, she actually will tell you. And I think she says, I am a person of note. I'm a male person of note, I think is what she says. And then she lists off all the things I've been a part of. So that's kind of fun.
Is it neat when the Emmys start coming in and the notice starts coming for some of the people that you work alongside every day?
Oh, it's unbelievably cool. Julia Garner has been to the Met twice. And it's I've known her for so long, so it's kind of neat to pull up my phone and be like, oh my gosh, look, he's at the Met Gala. I know her. And be able to text her and be like, you look fantastic. And Charlie Tahan plays my brother, and he and I are very close. We talk to him quite often still, even after filming has ended. But he's gotten a lot more notoriety, and we would even just be filming in Atlanta and walking around. And again, as I mentioned before, I've grown so much that, even the red hair sticks out, but not many people are going to be able to pick me out of a lineup. But walking around with Julia Gardner and Charlie Tahan, it is never a dull moment. People will come up to you from out of nowhere. It's crazy. And they'll be like, you look really familiar. Are you in Ozark? It's absolutely fantastic to be in that realm and see them do so well.
In your career, you've had the opportunity to work alongside some really veteran actors, Jason and Laura Linney on Ozark, Paul Bettany, you worked alongside him on Uncle Frank. Sam Rockwell is somebody else you worked alongside. People who have done this for a long time. What do you take away from experiences like that? Do you learn every time you're with them? Do you ask them things? Do you pick their brain?
100% you learn every time when you're with them. I mean, these people have dedicated their whole lives to this art, and what they have done in the industry is just unbelievable. I would say probably one of my biggest takeaways that I've especially, I also worked with, I got to work with Mark Wahlberg and what we call Family, but and it's different depending on what it is. So Sam Rockwell and Mark Wahlberg, I mean, they have fun nonstop. They're always making jabs, and it was just so fun to work with them. But as far as working with someone like Jason, I mean, the forethought that he puts into his character is just unlike anything I've ever seen before. And you honestly, you do not have to pick their brains because they're such good actors. At least on the sidelines, you can literally tell how their process is, what they're doing. It's just unbelievable to watch them in real life. It's difficult to be in scenes with them, honestly, because, at least for me, I have not been doing this very long. 5 years might seem like a long time for most people, but in something like this, that's baby years. That's nothing. And you get lost in the scene. I mean, to these amazing, unbelievable actors, it is real life, and you can see it in their eyes right there. And you have to remind yourself that you're an actor too. You need to stay in the scene. You need to get through it and make it. It's just unbelievable to watch.
How did you get into acting?
So when I was in elementary school, I actually had a friend of mine come up to me, and she was like, I have a music teacher who's looking for a young boy to sing in an opera. And she's like, I know you like to sing, you should call her and check it out. And, snowball effect. I called her, checked it out. And she was like, actually, we really like you. We really like your voice. Why don't you do a 6-month intensive opera training session with me? And I was like, okay. So I did that. And then this was when I was about 9. Keenan Auditorium at UNCW was doing Amal and the Night Visitors, which is one of the only English operas out there. It's about a story of the 3 kings coming to meet the baby Jesus. And the lead boy is named Amal, and he's the only kid in the whole show. And I went, auditioned. Sure enough, I got it. And then it was another, I think, 6 months of intensive opera training. And so I ended up doing that, and I got the bug. I absolutely fell in love. And another friend of mine was like, well, you got to go check out the USO building downtown and Thalian Hall. They're always doing community theater productions. And so I think I've done over 35 or 40 musicals in my life. I absolutely love it.
Who was that teacher, and what was and which elementary school was it? Because I have to make sure you want to give them a shout out.
Well, it wasn't a teacher. It was a friend of mine. Her name's Maya. She had a vocal coach, and it was fantastic. It was so out of the blue and random, and it was a Friends School, if you've ever heard of them.
Right.
Yeah. So.
What about your parents? When a young kid gets the bug to do something like that, you're 8, you're 9 years old, you can't drive yourself there, you can't walk there. They've got to take you to these things. They've got to make sure that, you get to where you need to go. How supportive have they been in this, I guess, what is now 10, 11 years?
Yeah, well, they have been the most supportive people on earth. I can't even begin. And, the great thing about it is neither of them ever pushed me towards doing it. I found it completely by myself. The one thing they did was they said, if you're going to do it, you got to give it 110% and not a single thing less. They said, we don't care what you do, you just have to do it to the best of your ability. And the amount of times that they've had to drive me, because we live by the beach, it's about a 30-minute ride downtown every single night for tech weeks and things like that. You'd be there 8-9 hours a day. And so they have been chauffeuring me around for a long time. I owe them a lot of gas money, but it could not be so supportive, so unbelievably supportive. And, it is sad sometimes because they can't always come to see me at set or things like that because they both work full time. And
right.
But they try to make it out there when they can. And that's always the funny thing too. My grandfather, actually, he's in Ohio. He's got nothing to do. So we called him up. We were like, hey, you want to come to Atlanta with me? Because you have to have a guardian on set with you until you're an adult.
Right.
And so like, sure. So my parents actually never even came to set until probably about the 2nd or 3rd season. They couldn't, but they're so unbelievably supportive. They got me acting classes and all sorts. Yeah.
You said at the top of the interview here that it's cool to be on Ozark. I imagine taking mom and dad to the set and meeting everybody. That's probably one of those really cool moments, right?
It is very, very neat. It was really fun for them to come for the first time. And not only that, again, because, those people on the set are my family and we all love each other. It was great just to see them welcome my actual family with open arms. And, you know, they got them food and there's a thing called Video Village, and that's where everybody goes to watch the scenes and the retakes. And they were like, we got you chairs and Video Villages and microphones so you can listen, yada, yada, yada. I mean, it was just fantastic. They were treated like royalty. And I was so happy that they got to come there and do that.
That's pretty awesome. I mean, that's one of the, I remember one of the first times when I first started in TV news, bringing my dad to the first TV station I ever worked at. And it was a station I watched growing up and that he had watched for years. And the first time I got the chance to take him into the newsroom to meet all of the anchors that he had seen who were now, you know, helping me grow as a journalist and as a reporter. I remember that time. I imagine it must have been the same way for you. I was just proud to be involved with it, but proud to be, hey, Dad, these are the people I work with every day. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's fantastic. And probably my favorite story from that with my parents is halfway through season 2, they did like a little semi-premiere for the cast to see the first episode or two. And they had a big game night. Everybody went for a very short a time, even Laura and Jason. And my mother was like, hey, my mother came with me. We drove from Wilmington to Atlanta just for the weekend. And she's like, hey, I got to grab something out of the car real quick. And my mother she does not get starstruck or anything like that. She just thinks that it's cool that I get to work with those people. And apparently Jason was leaving at the same time. And so it was just her and him in the parking lot. And so she ran back inside. She's like, look at all these selfies I got with Jason. She's like, my son's the redheaded one. And he was like, I know what I'm talking about. So
that's funny. That's a memory that you helped make. That's a really cool story.
Yeah, it's fun.
How did you land in Wilmington? From my research, you were born in Houston, Texas.
Yes, I was. So I was born in Houston, Texas, lived in Chicago for 3 years. But I have always had a fascination with the ocean and ocean life and things like that. And we visited one time when I was younger, and I wouldn't leave the beach. I just wouldn't leave the beach. My parents tried everything to get me to go in, and they couldn't. And so, you know, we came down a couple more times from Chicago, and we fell in love with it. And I actually, it was either last summer or the summer before, I got a chance to go work up at the Sea Turtle Hospital. And I spent about 2 months there doing a internship intensive. I absolutely love sea life and animals and that kind of thing. So Nice. This is the place that our family wanted to be because it's beautiful.
Well, it's cool that you're all now part of Wilmington. And when you're not doing the acting thing, what does Carson do? What will people find you doing when you're not auditioning or when you're not in Atlanta or shooting some of the other projects that you're involved with?
Well, back to the animals thing. I absolutely love them. And I had this opportunity last year. I got to go to St. Thomas, St. John and scuba dive and research coral and document. That's a very big passion of mine because of the dying coral reefs and getting to see that and traveling. I love traveling and scuba diving more than anything else, I think. The underwater is just so unbelievable. So on any given day, as long as it's warm out, not like today, you will probably find me in the water.
So you went to Friends School. Are you going to college now?
Yes, actually, I go to UNCW right now. Just online stuff, so I can still go fly and film and do things like that. But I do go to UNCW. I went to Friends School, and then I switched to St. Mark Catholic School.
Yep, know it well.
Yes, for my last 2 years of middle school. And then I went to Waterview Learning Academy for high school. And they were great. They were fantastic because that was when I was really, I would leave, every other week. I would fly to and from Atlanta to go work. And so Miss Heather over there, she was phenomenal with making sure that I was learning and keeping up with my programs and everything. Yeah.
As a young man now, 19, all of 19 years old, what's your advice? There's people like you who may want to get into this business when they're in middle school, or they love to dance, they love to sing. You've done, you say now a couple of dozen different productions in Thalian Hall and the local theater scene. What's your advice to somebody who, not long ago, it was you as a middle schooler who were yearning to do more, but now that you've done it, give some advice to a young man or a young lady who wants to try to do what you're doing.
Well, I would say don't be afraid to do the grunt work. There are always floors that need to be mopped or swept, and that's just anything that you can do to get a glimpse into that world that you want to succeed in. I swept the Thalian stage more times than I can possibly count. And I've also performed on the Thalian stage more times than I can count. If you want it, there is absolutely nothing stopping you but yourself. You've got to work hard, and you're going to have to be repetitive and keep doing the same menial tasks over and over again. But it will amount,
Can you share one of those stories? You said floors need to be mopped and things need to be done that are not in the spotlight. Share a story, if you don't mind, about something that you did to stick around or to try to earn that opportunity.
Well, I guess one of my favorite stories like that would be, they were doing a production at Thalian Hall. It was Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat. And this was a couple years after I had started doing theater productions. And so I had done some things or whatever. And I ended up not getting into the production, which, every once in a while you don't. That's fine. But I was like, I would love to be there with everybody. I would love to help any way I can. And they were like, you know what? We do need extra cleaners to help keep the stage tidy and sweep. And, stage manager also help people change in and out of costumes. And, but it was in the middle of the flu season a couple years ago. And everybody in the cast was getting it. Luckily, I didn't get it, but everybody in the cast was getting it. And so after about 2 weeks of helping costume change and sweeping and whatever, it was time for opening night. But one of the brothers was not able to go on. He was too sick. And so they were like, Carson, you're about his size. Do you think you can jump on stage? And I was like, you bet I can. And so I went on stage. I did the whole show because I've been watching them for the whole week. And it went fantastic. And then the second day, that brother was back, but another brother was out. And so they were like, Carson, do you mind, going in again? And I was like, absolutely not. I'd be more than happy to. I think by the time the production was over, I had played 4 or 5 brothers and maybe a wife, maybe one of the wives as well. And I remember one night, one of the brothers, they had this whole tango scene and all this dancing and whatever. And I mean, I was there 30 minutes before opening and I was trying to learn how to tango on stage, and it ended up going fantastic. But I got more, credit and brownie points from being there and doing that than anything I could have possibly done.
Yeah, and that's a great story, because the people that are willing to do anything, good things happen to good people, as they say, and that's not by accident. Normally, it's hard work is rewarded. What's next for Carson? Where will we see you again? I know you have Naomi coming out, right? A CW series.
Yes.
What's next? I know, and the other 7 episodes of Ozark later this year at some point in time, right?
Yes. Hopefully before the summer is what I'm hoping for. Yeah. So Naomi just premiered on the CW, and I've got a couple things I can't quite talk about yet, but hopefully I will be on the big screen again here pretty soon. I'm very excited for that, and maybe I'll even be in a Thalian production in the next year or so. I would like to do that as well.
What do you see for yourself down the road? You've been in a lot of different things. You've done theater, you've done movies, you've done TV. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Do you like the on-screen side? Do you like the directing, producing side? What's Carson's long-term goal?
Well, I love being on screen, but directing has always fascinated me. So I'm currently a theater major, but I might try to go down the directing path more so. I've been doing it now for quite a while, and not just the TV and movies aspect, but also musical theater. So I've seen and worked with a ton of directors, and I absolutely love that thought process and putting together a literal, moving, working piece of art. I think that's absolutely fascinating. And what a talent if you can do that.
Well, things have gone tremendous for you. Season 4, the first 7 episodes of Ozark, #1 streaming on Netflix. 7 more to go. And then I'm sure we'll see you in another production, either here in Wilmington or something that we can talk about again as we stay up on your career. Carson, congratulations. Best of luck to you. And we thank you for your valuable time and being on the One-on-One with John Evans podcast.
Thank you so much, John. Have a great day.
A big thank you to Carson Holmes for sparing time from his schedule and joining us for this week's podcast interview. Don't forget, look for him and the entire cast when Netflix launches the last 7 episodes of Ozark sometime here in the next couple of months. And you can catch up with Carson. You can find him on Instagram most times. He is Carson_Holmes with the number 3. Now, before we go, I'd like to ask you a favor. Please download and subscribe to the One-on-One with John Evans podcast on whatever app you use to listen to your favorite shows. And tell a friend if you like this episode. You may like some of our others, and they may like them too. Leave us a rating or a review if you would be so kind. The more feedback we get from our friends like you, the higher we'll be listed on the apps, and the better chance we'll have of bringing in even more new listeners. I'm John Evans. Thanks so much for joining us for this week's episode of One-on-One.